Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome to the Field Guide to Healing podcast, where we are dedicated to self discovery, personal growth, and the power of transformation through conversation. So, we are your hosts. I'm Ronnie,
I'm Jen.
and each week we embark on soulful explorations into the paths of healing.
Join us as we share profound insights from our experiences, the community, touching reflections, and practical tools to guide you on your own healing journey.
Whatever it might be that you are seeking, whether it's clarity, connection, or the spark of reflection, you have found your sanctuary here. So let's dive in deep together today.
Today, we're going to be talking about authenticity in our relationships in this episode, Field Guide to Authenticity.
Yeah. So, hello, everyone. This is episode 3. Happy to have you here. And as we start today, I think we're just going to have like a pretty real conversation with everybody about authenticity, like in practice in our real lives. So Jen and I had a pretty serious friend business partner conversation last week instead of recording episode 3. So some of you who have been listening might have noticed that we are not on our typical schedule right now, that we've shifted things. And that's because of that conversation. Jen, do you have anything you'd like to like, kind of throw in here as we're starting here?
Yeah, I'm even feeling anxious talking about it right now, only because like the realigning with like I felt like such shit in life. It wasn't because of our conversation. It was like realigning with like how like it felt to not be
Yeah.
authentic to like myself, to our work, because our work is really like a passion project, and it was
Yeah.
feeling like work, and it just felt like
I
heavy
agree.
and kind of like yucky.
Yeah.
Not
I
yeah.
was feeling like sluggish. I felt like I was getting work done, but I definitely wasn't like looking forward to our conversations as much, which is like, if you know, Jen and I were pretty passionate in our exchanges with one another, like across the board. So for us to like show up and almost like not be looking forward to that felt not aligned with what my expectations were or like my hopes for this passion project. And so when Jen and I met the week prior and we didn't like record, because usually we do like a record and then like an edit and like chat kind of business session. And when we went to record, Jen was like, I feel weird about recording. If you're feeling weird about this. And I was like, yeah, I think maybe we shouldn't be recording today. And then I like, because my heart was like beating in my chest, I was very, um, like nervous to not speak to Jen, but like my nervous system was just like feeling a little like, okay, we're about to like speak our truth here. And like historically, my nervous system has been, afraid to do that because of things, because of past experience. So like this is rewiring and refiring all of these neurons and making these new connections. So like, yay. And I was talking with Jen and I was like, I don't feel like we're in our authentic selves. Like I see us worrying about, I see like as like I'm ready to move into a certain topic. There's worry from you about it, about like certain things. And I'm going to let Jen like speak on that. And I articulated that to her and I was like, this doesn't feel like things that are conversational anymore. They feel like they are counseling. And that's not what our hope is for this podcast. So I'm gonna like kind of
Yeah, we
shift and let
wanted to
Jen.
like we wanted it to like be not counseling.
Yeah,
Because
like
like
another
Ronnie and I,
space.
yeah, because we've been having these conversations before we were counselors. Like we're just like people who inherently do like the deep conversations with like of
Yeah,
course like the goofiness involved,
yeah,
and like we wanted to be able to create a space, like a community where we can get deep and have it be like our friendship be the basis of the depth.
yeah,
And like again, like what Ronnie was saying, it just was like I was getting really worried about viewership, feeling discouraged, like my life just I was just feeling burdened by life,
yeah,
walking forward so slowly, feeling like no progress is being made. And that was my authentic self was feeling crap about everything. And that was
yeah,
showing up in our work. And without Ronnie being able to be brave and call me in, I would still be feeling that way. And honestly, I now thinking about the whole week, I've been feeling so much better about my life and being like more inspired to engage with my life since we had this conversation last week.
Yeah. And like you'll see me like these are authentic smiles and like little tears that are coming up because
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful showing of like what vulnerability can do for your relationships. And I think a lot of us have been taught that being vulnerable in relationship is harmful and it leads to pain and suffering and that it leads to rejection and abandonment.
Mhm.
And I think when like what our relationship has shown me and I hope can like show some of you is that that's not what it means. It actually means fighting for your connection and being honest with yourself and also your friends and loved ones. And it can lead to feeling better and like moving stagnant energy and like kind of propelling
Yeah.
forward. So like all of these feelings you're seeing right now are authentic, and it's my hope and desire to like bring more of myself in this way to this podcast. I have a lot of things I'm really excited to bring to you guys, a lot of things that I have been like probing Jen about a little bit, and vice versa. So like we both have some exciting things that we're working on, and that conversation is what has allowed us to renew that sense of authenticity and that sense of passion. Uh,
Yeah. And like what better way to jump back into recording episodes to share with everyone than it being about authenticity, specifically in relationships?
yeah,
Because this is like I've learned how to do that through our friendship,
yeah,
and oh, it just feels so good to use this platform that we have together to explore that
yeah,
and be reinvigorated coming back into this work together.
yeah. So I think this is like a beautiful, just pivoting point to
Yeah.
step into what we're going to talk about. And I wanted to start this segment with reading to you a little portion about the autumn equinox to help us frame where we're going here, because I do love the change of the seasons. I love the energetic change in this season. Like I feel it. I love it. I'm here in it. And it just feels so interesting to me how these, like what we're experiencing right now, is so in alignment with the seasonal change. So I'm just gonna like offer this to all of you. I'm not gonna get too crazy here, but the quote that they have here in this book is called Hello Goodbye, and it's a book of rituals for the year because I love to honor the markings and the changings. It just helps me to be more grounded in the time. Is from Parker Palmer, and it says, the closer that you get to light, you are also like the closer you get to the darkness. And I think that that is true of both. And when I'm in therapy with people, I often talk about like we're not just growing our capacity, like we already know how to deal with the unpleasant things for the most part. Like we're growing our capacity to deal with them in more like positive ways in terms of like helping us instead of harming us or like making us more unpleasantly feeling. um but like we're leaning into how to feel the pleasant stuff as well and like holding
Yeah.
space for that. So the old English word for autumn was actually harvest until about the 16th century. Not only is this a time of year for gathering, plucking, and reaping crops, but it is also a time of reckoning with all that life has given us and how we have shown up to receive it. So, have our hands been grabby, clingy, or possessive? Have we hoarded our harvests and kept our gifts to ourselves? Have we taken more than we have already been full?
Hmm.
Mm. Or maybe we find that our thoughts are only focusing on the scarcity when life is trying to show us abundance. The time of harvest is asking us not only to reap the gifts of the season, but also wonder about how we are taking them. So, what this is talking about is one way to distinguish between taking more and receiving more is by stopping to remember what we already have. So the fall equinox is asking us to sit on the edge of enoughness. I just want to like hone in on that. The edge of enoughness. And I'm just writing this down,
We're
being
both
real.
like scribbling.
Yeah. So we're sitting on this edge of enoughness, and it marks a time to reflect on our home, our friendships, the food in our fridge, the money in our bank, the health in our bodies. and the togetherness of our family or our communities, and the courage it took to just wake up this morning, and to consider letting that be enough.
Mm.
So, this is a season where we are being free of needing more. We're coming back down with a grounded, humble attitude. We're getting more gratitude. We're focusing in and leaning into that nature. So, autumn is a time where we hollow ourselves out and remove the excess that comes with a hunger that's never satisfied. So, like, this can touch a lot of things. The never having enough, the always needing more, that we can actually receive and be grateful for how much we are receiving. Mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna read a little more, and we're gonna like ease in here because there's one more part.
Okay.
So the autumn equinox is allowing us to take inventory of our lives. First and foremost, like looking at that never enough. So what it's really about is the giving and the receiving, the taking and the giving. Yeah,
This is so aligned, Ronnie.
I know. So like let this be what we're talking about. Gratitude is something like it's a hot kind of word, but it is diminishing, I think, in the value. Like it talks about here how gratitude has diminished somewhat in its value. So it's like a child who says quickly, very thank you before they eat, and they say it very fast, but it's not a courtesy, it's a courtship is what it talks about.
Mm.
So I'm going to write that down. So it talks about it's a way of drawing closer by giving, not taking. So gratitude isn't just a courtesy, it's a courtship.
I love that. I'm thinking about like the first thing that comes to my mind is with romantic relationships, like the
Mm-hmm.
importance of like when your partner does something kind for you, like when you say thank you, it's because like you're allowing yourself to receive that love from them from their action, and you are then taking that love and verbalizing it back to them.
Yes.
And that's like also like
Yes.
reciprocal in nature.
Recognition is so important. And I think we don't know this generally, but it's a need. It's one of the universal needs we have is recognition. But recognition goes both ways, giving it and receiving it.
Yeah, and I think the receiving that like when you were talking about that, that's exactly like where I've been at in my life. It's like I have all of this abundance around me that I'm unable to see because
Mm-hmm.
I'm fearful of losing it. That's been my theme of the whole year that I've been
Literally.
working on, which is so cool because it started out with like my relationships, and I've really made so much progress, and it's so cool to look at that. Like it's October now, and I feel great like with where I'm at to the point where like Ronnie and I were able to like we're talking about it today. But just like when it comes to like career stuff, that's where the scarcity was. And then the other thing
Yeah.
that you said that really sat with me outside of sitting on the edge of enoughness, because that is like that needs to
Yeah.
be written down. I need to see that.
Yeah.
But remove excess of hunger that is never satisfied. And it's not like when you initially hear something like that, at least for me, it sparks the idea that people are it's like gluttony almost, like it's seen as a negative thing. But the follow up after that being you can receive shows that like feeling closed off to the abundance of our life, and that like there's a part of us that is in that scarcity mindset. Like it just all is wrapped up so beautifully in the idea of like humility. Like you have to sit with yourself and be with yourself in order to recognize one who you are, but what makes you who you are. Look around you, and that's the abundance
Yeah.
that surrounds you. That is you.
Mm. Yeah. And I'm just smiling right now because I am having a moment of just like the idea of something in my head coming to fruition. Jen and I have talked about so many times wanting to like pull from texts and talk about them and like apply them to life. And I just feel like we're doing that right now. So I'm just like taking a
Yeah.
moment to be gratitude for this enoughness and letting this here is enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like taking a moment just to like thank the universe, but I think what we kind of want to like pivot into with like this giving, this taking is, as Jen said, like our mind goes to relationships, and it's because we're beings that heal in relationship and can be harmed in relationship. I wanted to talk about the concept of high cost relationships.
And what's a
What
high cost
comes
relationship?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, what comes to mind? Probably questions. So a high cost relationship is relationships where you are putting in more than you are going to receive. So this is where that theme comes in of giving and taking. This is where there's a party that is receiving more than they're willing to give back, so they're taking more than they're giving. And then there's a party that's giving more than they're getting back. They're giving more than they're taking, than they're receiving. What does that spark in your brain hearing that definition, Jen?
Um, well, it's emotional cost. Like I'm thinking about like what I have in my life that I'm spending.
Mm,
So like my emotions, my time, my worry, if I'm the person that's giving more, like why is this person not answering me? So it also like creates stories in my mind too. So it takes up a lot of
like
it takes
emotional.
my emotional space, yeah. And
Yeah.
then on the other end of that is thinking like what does it cost when I'm the person that's not engaging as much?
Yeah. Is there a cost?
Well, it depends on the person. I would say guilt could be one. Um, but there's so many different layers, and it really
Yeah.
depends on each person. So
Yeah.
can't really say exactly, but like it could be things like coming to mind. Oh, am I a selfish person?
Yeah.
Do I allow this person in my life to do all of the work and carry our friendship? Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know if like where we want to go with that part of the
Yeah.
conversation because it's pretty
Yeah. So,
heavy.
like, what I want to like say off of that is like when I hear of the spending terminology, I think it's really helpful here, and I want to like equate that to like think the labor that's being done, and like when we're in relationship with people, there's a certain amount of labor and upkeep and things that we are obligated to do, like, or we feel obligated to do through that connection. And like that's emotional labor that's happening. It's like mental labor that's happening when you're doing those questionings, those concerns, the like tending to the emotional parts. So like that's the spending that's happening. So like you are almost over time, you're arriving in this relationship in a deficit. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when we don't have reciprocity. Reciprocity again is when there's take and there's give and there's give and there's take. And it doesn't have to be equal all the time, but there is like this balancing, like, like it's when you have like you're friends with people, at least this is how me and my friends kind of work. It's like, oh, like they've spent something here, oh, I'll get you like another time. It's like we're kind of like ongoing, like kind of working out our dividends and our money as we go out. It's like, oh, don't worry about it, like I have your appetizer here, and then they get like something over there. It's like, think about that in emotional labor. It's like, oh, they've got me here and I'll get them there, because we're not always there to give, but we shouldn't always be there to take either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when do we know we're getting enough? When do we know
Loaded
enough?
question.
Yeah, when do we know we have enough reciprocity happening? Here's another question. When do we know we're out of balance? So like there's two things that are happening here, and I want to like lean into how do we know when it's enough? And then what do we do with that when we know it's not
Mm.
enough? I mean, that's like, okay, there's duality here. Both people have equal part in this relationship, meaning we both have a commitment to communicate and to work to keep this connection going.
Yeah, so like when you become friends with someone, there's an agreement that happens that you are going to put effort into staying in their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not committing to having someone stay in your life.
Exactly. And we also have to communicate things too. So like yes, we're becoming friends. But this happens in like intimate relationships as well, where we get into like this union with someone, but we don't talk about like the specifications of that union. Like, what does it
Yeah.
mean to be friends with me? And like there's different spheres of friendship. So we might have like our really close, intimate circle of people. And this might be people that you either like just have like a connection with, where it's like, oh, I don't have to talk to this person all the time, but like I know they're my friend. Like this is a person that I can rely on, even if we're not in like a day-to-day communication. I think that's like a layer of inner circle. But then there's like that inner circle where you are in a more consistent communication with these people. They kind of know what's going on in your life. Maybe you know what's going on in theirs. Maybe no, you do. I would hope. But this is that inner circle, and like I think this can change person to person what variables mean that.
Mm.
And then you have like the outer layers. And I think that people kind of like have people at certain proximities based off of what's being given and what's being taken. So you might be like, how do I know I'm out of balance? I think there's a couple ways to know we're out of balance in a relationship. Jen, do you have any that come to mind? I have some already brewing.
Ooh, okay, then I think you should share, because the way that you said that had like such conviction behind it, so please keep it rolling.
Yes. So how do we know? I think one way of knowing, if like think this can maybe happen over more time, but like you start to feel resentment. You start to feel like you don't really want to spend time with this person, or you start to feel jaded when they're taking more than they're giving. Like there might come a time where you notice an indifference between those two things happening. I think that there's also, you might start to notice like your energy is drained with these relationships, and like how much work you might be doing in them. You might notice certain patterns that might be popping up, but they don't feel good. Like maybe there's like, you notice your feelings after interacting with this person, or you just don't feel good. You feel maybe upset or hurt by the lack of reciprocation. Like these are indicators like in your body and in your person that are going to tell you something's coming up, and it's not necessarily pleasant.
Yeah.
And not to say that all of our interactions with our friends need to be pleasant, but, or with these close relationships or relationships in general need to be pleasant. Because like, yeah, like having a hard conversation can, most people might say, is unpleasant, but it's has positive like consequences, if that makes sense.
That's a really good point, because like when, let's say like you have a conversation with someone, it feels like very passive aggressive or surface level, or like someone's like, you ask someone how they're doing because they don't seem like themselves, and they're just very like standoffish towards you, or rejecting that there's anything wrong, or like their defense mechanisms start to come out, like you're left feeling like that heaviness. Like when Ryan and I, when we had that really difficult conversation, I left it feeling like rejuvenated and a sense of lightness. And like,
Yeah.
so the conversation itself, it was not a pleasant interaction to start. It was like both of our nervous systems were flaring up and reacting to it. But I think because like we were able to have our agreement of friendship be the priority in the discussion, we were able to like have the positive consequences come out of it. Which, if you're like not, if you don't have a background in like behavioral psych, all that kind of stuff, consequences can be positive or negative, taking things away or adding things. So like I like when someone is standoffish, like my first example, and like their defense mechanisms come out where they're not engaging with you, that's, they're not engaging with me, that's a negative consequence. They're taking the ability for me to receive or give away. So that like is a breach of our agreement.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you need space, but you have to communicate that so I can give you the space.
Yeah. Like ignoring someone versus communicating like, hey, like how this correspondence went didn't really sit well with me, and I need space in order to process that and let my body like come down. Like I don't know when my coming back will be, but like know that I'm taking space and I will circle back. Sometimes it can be helpful to like define that number, or like be, hey, like I'm going to take a couple days, or I'm going to take like a couple hours, like if you can, because again, we're trying to be kind to their nervous system and like let them have some idea. But I know sometimes that's not possible. Like I know for me, sometimes I just need like an undefined amount of space to like process something, because I just process things slower.
But you also communicate that.
Okay, cool.
So
yeah, true.
And I think it's part of the agreement too, like a friendship, is like trusting in each other. So like I think a big one is I don't answer immediately, pretty much ever. It's very rare that I do. And like Ronnie, I don't know, like for you, how did that feel when we first started texting as friends? Like was that like a, why is Jen not answering?
I don't think
It's a while.
so. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's been a minute. Jen and I have been friends for like 6 years, 7 years now. So
Oh.
I know. We've known each other for longer. Um, I don't know. I would think maybe at some point in our relationship it could have been, but I also feel like I've definitely become much more regulated system wise since we've become friends, just like as a person. And I think I've also changed a lot in my communicating patterns too. So, like, maybe when we first started seeing one another, I might have been more immediate. But I think now I give myself a lot more space to respond and to respond when, like, I have space to do so, or just like living life off of my phone. So, I don't feel jaded by it. I think I do the same thing.
Yeah. And that's the thing though,
Yeah.
like once you get to know your friend, you know what to expect from them. And so like
Yeah.
when there is something going on that does not meet set expectations, which when I say expectations, it's I have certain demands that I need from you as a friend, but it's also you have baseline functioning behavior. And when I see that you're off kilter, I am going to be worried about you. And
Yeah.
if you're like talking to an inner circle friend, you notice these things. If they're like, if
Yeah.
something's going on with them, if they're not seeming like themselves in social situations, they're not reaching out, it's trusting in that friendship to be able to say, this isn't personal. How can I show
Yeah.
up for my friend?
And I love that you were bringing this up because this leads us right into the next point, which is also with signs of being out of balance. It's when we're projecting things. Like, I think
Mm.
it's both parties' responsibility when we're doing this to take accountability for their own work. And we're gonna like talk about this more. So, like, don't worry, like, we'll lean into that. But like, we both have also agreed to do that work of like, not like knowing when it's our stuff versus when it's something happening in the dynamic. That's because like sometimes we do project our own things, our own like perception is skewed, and like knowing how to work through that and identify those things, whether that be talking to your friend about it, so like communicating, like Jen was talking about, can we communicate vulnerably with this person? I think it's an important question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Can I communicate with them and not be defensive myself, or regulate that defensiveness? And can they do that as well? Can I trust them to do that?
Hmm.
And this is not to infantilize our friends, but we go into relationship with people with, like Jen said, certain expectations. So it's like, can they hear other people out? Can they hold space for my feelings? Can they validate them even if they don't necessarily, like, 100% subscribe? Like, if their experience is different, like, can we hold space for one another?
Yeah.
And then that leads us into managing our expectations of our friendships. And I think, like Jen said, we do kind of learn about our relationships when we can begin to make those categorical assumptions of like, oh, this is like a close proximity kind of friend, or this is someone who or this relationship is a work relationship versus like this is a personal one, or, like there's these different things. And we all, I think, do it. We have this human nature to kind of categorize. I think it's more loose for me. I feel like it's more of like a scatter plot. Like, I have like tethers to all of these people in some way, and like I'm at the middle of it, but like the way that I am in communication, proximity, hanging out, etc., is different. And that's okay. I think we all do this, and I think it's like mutual in a lot of my dynamics that I have. Like, there's a knowing, um but like, can I manage the expectations? Like, when this person shows me over time that they are going to take more from me than they're willing to give back to this relationship, even after I've communicated it. And again, we don't always do this. So this is where that accountability comes in of, are you communicating? Both
So that's
people.
can I jump in here? I think something that you said earlier when you think of persecutory beliefs, which
Mm,
it's really easy when we're feeling yucky about an interaction to be like, what happened? Why? Our brains jump to blame. You either blame
mm-hmm.
yourself because you need a sense of control, or you blame the other person because it feels too bad to acknowledge that you took part in something uncomfortable, yucky feeling happening
Mm,
within the relationship. So you either can accept the blame fully, and that feels gross for you, but you're able to process it, and that can lead to like people pleasing tendencies, whatever. Or you completely deny it, and that's where these defense mechanisms that like some
mm,
people call self-sabotaging behaviors can come out. Or you blame the other person and you say, I'm never talking to them again, I can't believe they acted this way towards me.
Yeah, and you
completely
cut them
denying your
out,
part. Yeah.
which is that's when we're denying connection. When we
Yeah.
do that, like we're losing connection in some way. And like that happens. Like people, you might notice this happens. Like you just like have friendships that faded off. They didn't talk to you anymore. They didn't communicate anything, and like you just kind of like, okay, like guess we're not friends. guess we're not in communication. So I think that's really important to have that understanding of blame that comes into play as well. Um,
So when it comes to hearing people out, which is like where Ronnie was going with this, you like it's important for you when we're like doing this like, kind of like mental checklist. Like, okay, is this a high cost relationship? Being able to call yourself in to say, okay, I can't communicate with this person. It's like this person's unsafe for me.
yeah,
Are you sure? That's all I'm asking. Like, because
yeah,
sometimes like they could be a very safe person, and that's why these defense mechanisms are coming out in this relationship. It could feel unsafe for you to be engaging with someone who is safe.
yeah.
Um,
Mm,
or also you just have like this. You can just have like a history of like if you have siblings growing up, you don't want to get in trouble, right? You put the blame on everyone else. Like these like tiny little things that we learn that just become like subconscious, they can come out within our friendships. So it doesn't have to be something intense that you're finding out about yourself. It's just asking like, okay, I don't feel good here. What the fuck happened? And just
yeah.
being open to whatever actually happened.
Yeah. And it takes work and it takes time to like cultivate this. If we don't have it with ourselves, it can be really hard to cultivate with other people.
Oh my
And
gosh,
it's
yeah.
not impossible to cultivate with others, but know that it takes work to develop both sides of this coin, like with yourself, with other people. They're not contingent on one another, but
Mm-hmm.
they do have relationship. Um,
Yeah.
so like, yeah, managing expectations with ourselves, with other people, taking like considering these are a lot of variables to consider. So like, we understand how it can be really difficult and how there can be like a lot of things at play here. Um, so like I want to hold space for that for
Mm-hmm.
sure. The difficulty in navigating some of these close interpersonal.
I mean, we're talking about like showing up as your authentic self in relationships. I mean,
Yeah.
and like that's so hard to do, especially like sorry, I'm gonna recenter myself here. It's so hard to like show up as your authentic self anyway, because in so many of the spaces that we're in, we like if you're an anxious person or just in general, like we try to fit again, human nature, we try to fit into each place that we're in. So you're automatically tailoring yourself to be who you think you need to be in each space. So you're like
Mm,
tuning into the people around you, you're tuning into the
mm,
energy of the space when really like the task is such a tall order to allow yourself to fully show up into a room with your own energy and your own behaviors and mannerisms and engaging with the people the way that you want to. Like this isn't something that's an easy task whatsoever. um so like
yes.
I guess when it comes to being like authentic in your relationships, it seems like you need to be authentic with yourself first and foremost, so that you can have the humility to even like know yourself and know where you want to even show up.
I think this builds off like a lot of the things we have talked about, like learning about our values and like these, I think, play heavily into our relationships as well. Like our values and our relationships are aligned. I don't believe that you need to be like 100, like, you know what I mean? We've talked about we are not 100% healed. We're not on a journey to be like this healed being. That's not what our life is about. But
Yeah.
like there's things that we can or might want to do to help our relationships with ourselves or with others.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I don't think you have to fully have that developed authentic self, but it
No.
working towards getting to know yourself better is a lifelong journey. So like when Jen and I talk about that, we know that this is like something that's going to change. It's going to adapt. Our experiences, our relationships, all of these things influence these things.
Yeah.
And I want to like what came to my mind is we have lived in different circles throughout our lives. You might have some overlap, you might have things that stay the same. And there's roles that we, like Jen was talking about, that we start to take on. And that can sometimes happen. So what can be happening is we're playing out like a past experience in like a present relationship. And that's what can be
Yeah.
harmful about these at times is like what the question that came to my mind that I think is really important for me is, have I assumed a role that I don't like? Have I reassumed a role that I thought I have outgrown or that I have outgrown. Because that happens. We replay some of our past in our present, and that does influence how we're doing things. But it's like kind of thinking about you wake up from the dream. You're like, holy shit, like all of a sudden your prefrontal cortex is on. You're like, oh my God, like what's going on here? Have you assumed a role that you're not comfortable with? Are you giving more than you're taking? Are you taking more than you're giving?
Mm.
And then that goes into like, other things. But I think it's important. But what was coming to your brain, Jen, when I said that?
Oh, a lot. But where I'm at right now is like the communication with yourself component.
Yeah.
Um, you took me on a journey there. That was great. The questions that you were asking.
Sorry.
Don't say sorry. That was great. I feel like I'm like I went into listener mode. I'm like, listening to your podcast.
Jen went on autopilot. Okay, so like,
so can you present that question again?
Yeah. Okay, so the question I asked is, have I assumed a role that I don't like?
Yes. Yeah, that I think is so important. So this is where this is where I was in my mind. I was answering your question. So like we have these narratives, again, human behavior, categorizing things. We categorize how we're supposed to act in certain situations so that it's easier for us. And so like if you're like I was on school council like from elementary school all the way through. So like I wasn't in the social experience in a lot of situations. I was leading it. So I was always more comfortable in college being the leader of the group, not because I wanted to. I did not want more work to do. I just like thought I had to because that's just the narrative, social narrative that my brain had programmed.
Yeah. And then like it takes time to like I said, awaken from that and realize like over time, like that's what it is like realizing, oh, this isn't aligned with me. This doesn't feel good. I don't like this. And sometimes these things can look really pretty. These relationships, they can make us feel the same way that like sometimes we are having like an experience with an old wound. It's like a revisiting of something that you've already been through, and it's like, ooh, we're here again. All right, because these things happen. They come up in our life, and like, it's not a point of contention. It's a point of reflection.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And I think that's something that we learned through our friendship. Like the tiniest little things for Ronnie and I were like we had like a disagreement on like a plan, like something that small, and we were nervous to tell each other. So like it didn't have to like the thing is like we learned like it doesn't need to be scary to disagree or to want to do something else. And honestly, it's sad. It's like even reflect on like who the hell was I friends with? What happened to me?
Yeah,
who hurt me?
So many people probably, and also we probably have too.
Oh yeah, 100%.
What comes to my mind is this memory of Jen and I when we were at a beach for a weekend. It was like 3 a.m. So we stayed like really late at this like concert. It was like all friggin' day. And we're like in the streets, tired, hungry, trying to get like a taxi.
I remember
and
this.
Jen and I are like, she is like replaying wounds from her like sibling, and I'm like replaying wounds from like old friendships. And she's like, but when Jess and I'm like, I'm not Jess. I was like, I'm not her. And we're just like in the middle of the street having this just sleepy time fueled squabble.
So you know what's so funny though? It wasn't a squabble. It was I don't know. I feel like it was something like I wanted pizza, and Ronnie's like, I'm fucking tired.
Yeah.
That's like all it was. But that's like the whole thing. Like it's like in these moments, it can feel like contention because previously it was. But when you trust in the friendship that you have, when you trust in the agreement, in your expectations, like it's a place of reflection.
Yeah. It's just like a funny memory. It makes me think of like 2 siblings like having like that's where we were at in our friendship. Like just but again, it's being able to be our whole selves. Like that's authentic. Like we were able to show up in that space with our shit without our spoons. Like neither one of us was energetically at a place to have disputes or conversation. And we handled it. We moved through it. And these things happen. Sometimes they're small little things. Sometimes it is larger. And that's when managing those expectations again comes into place, is like,
Yeah.
what are my expectations of myself? What are my expectations of this person? Is it realistic? Are these, like, have they shown me historically that they're even capable of meeting these needs? Is it realistic for me to expect them to meet this need? Is that the kind of friend they're going to be for me?
Mm.
Maybe, maybe not. It depends. People can change, but like, these things come through, I think, a lot of communication and otherwise. And sometimes it can be the friendship not being a thing. Like, I've had
Yeah.
relationships where, like, I have had time happen, whether we, like, where we didn't become friends again, or where there has been some relationships where there's been time apart and we came back together and it was really beautiful and we were both in a similar place and it's better.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that happens through, like, communication and otherwise. Maybe sometimes
Yeah.
fucking up. Like, sometimes fucking it up. That teaches us
So
something too.
where we've gotten to this point in the conversation, it's making me think like, have we been very black and white in our thinking with saying that in order for us to have a good friendship, there's conditions, um, like needing to be vulnerable,
No.
no like not have defensiveness and communication, and hearing other people out isn't like these essential things that we're talking about. But I'm thinking, no, I think anyone that I ever want to interact with, even just like someone I'm passing by in the grocery store, these are my expectations for common courtesy and respecting my fellow human.
Well, let's hold space for, there is no realm where there's perfection. My
No.
expectation when going into a relationship isn't that, like, that they're perfectly showing up for me in all ways. They're never defensive. They're never struggle with vulnerability. It's like, no, those things are present and they're willing to do whatever they need to do to, like, deal with that, and also still show up, like, still come back around. Like, you and I
Yeah.
don't have a relationship devoid of defenses coming up or miscommunications or, these different things. And also, it's the stepping into the unknown. It's like it's stepping into that trust and the unknown in that place. And not every relationship's going to be that way. So it's like,
Mm.
it's okay. Like, some people might be more defensive or less vulnerable or this, that, and the other. And that's like meeting them where they are. Do I still want them in my life? Do I love them anyway? And like, I love all of my people. And also, like, not all of my people have the same proximity to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's defined by the interactions we've had. Those are information that you can move forward with, and that's all we can do in life,
Yeah.
is try to make informed decisions about the information that we're receiving. And like, that's like, we do learn about people through how they behave and our interactions and whatnot. So like, to not take that data, I think, wouldn't be real. Like, people do take interactions and exchanges and they apply them to, like, moving forward.
You know what I'm realizing? So this is a two-parter here.
Yeah.
Defining authenticity in the sense of it's small, it's simple, it's measurable, it's actionable. Just doing your fucking best.
Yeah, no,
That's it.
authenticity is everything, Jen. It's like,
Yeah.
authenticity is like you and me coming to this space exactly as we are, the good things, like the unpleasant, the pleasant, all of them, and choosing to,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's, I think, being in relationship with people is like, you don't get to choose what parts of them come to the table. All
No.
of them comes to the table. And there might be things, like, I've talked about this with in my own therapeutic journey, so, and I'm happy to share about that, is that we benefit from the things that we might not like about people too. It's not black and white. Like, there's duality in everything. So for us to even
Mm-hmm.
act as though authenticity isn't like, authenticity is like I think it's just like, it's so encompassing.
I think authenticity is approaching, like being able to turn toward, like we talked about last episode, like allow your guiding light to shift to, and that's it. That's where like you're done. Good job. You were
Can we
authentic
own our
there.
shit? Can we
Yeah.
own all of our shit? All of it. Can we just own it? It's like the act of, like, as we move through life, it's the past and our present and our future selves. We think of them as separate things, but they are all the same.
Mm-hmm.
We have been every version of ourselves, and we try to, like, pick and choose what ones we like. Guess it doesn't work that way.
No.
Can you own all of you? Can you show up I am trusting the people in my circle to show up as themselves and own it. If I'm defensive, I fucking own it. Show it
And
up.
that's the
Be
thing. If
that
you're
way.
showing up and you're feeling uncomfortable, like that's okay. That literally is fine. Say that, and that's you being
Name it.
authentic. Yeah.
Can we name it? Can we claim it? Can we call
Mm-hmm.
it in? Because that's what breeds connection. Like, 'cause we are, none of us are ever going to be exactly what everyone else needs. There's no way we can be
Yeah.
that. Why would we want to also be made to order?
There's another part of this too where like this actually happened with Ronnie and I. We were at a concert. I think it was it was the Wood Brothers concert.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And Ronnie was getting very hot. And I noticed that they needed to like get out of the crowd. And I think you were like uncomfortable. You didn't want to leave the space because like, we found these like awesome people to stand next to. Your partner was still waiting there. We were really close to the stage, and I just like grabbed you and took you to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And like I think
Yeah.
that's another layer of it too. Like you didn't need to like I guess it's a close friend thing, like inner circle workings. Um, but I was able to inner circle. I just thought about like Akatar for a second.
Me too.
um, but yeah, like being able to like notice when your friend, like even if they're not communicating verbally, body language is huge.
Yeah.
Energy is huge. Like there's plenty of other ways you can communicate with your friends. You don't need them to say it. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
I'd be like you're acting shitty if my friend saw that I was sad and was like, well, you're not telling me that you're sad, so you need to come to me with this party. I'm like, no, that's like really
Yeah.
bitchy. We're not doing that.
Yeah. Attuning. And like,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
remember that because I felt so much better once I got in the bathroom. Like, I felt infinitely better than I did when we were in there. So like there is, again, that's like part of, it's the give and the take. It's again, it's that caretaking component, I think, that comes into place a little bit, but like attuning to the people around you as well. Like one that I think of is like my partner and I had went out to eat, and my stomach just started not to feel well. Like I had just like a cramp or just like some pain, and I'm sitting there just like, oh, and I'm like, it's your birthday, let's stay out. Like this is for you. Like I'm hunched over, I'm in pain, and my partner is like, why would you think it would be enjoyable for me to sit and watch you be in pain just for the sake of my birthday meal? Like, no, like that's not. And it was just like one of those like light bulb moments of just like, oh, like I think I'm being a good partner and a good friend right now, but I'm not, because they're seeing me suffer and I'm also not enjoying it. So like I wasn't being a good friend to myself, and I wasn't being a good friend to my partner, and I needed that
You also
call
were
in.
being inauthentic because you weren't actually there anymore in the experience. You were focused on how you were feeling, trying to like be okay enough to
Pretend
get
like
through
I
the
was
night.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I needed that communication. My partner called me in. And it like
Yeah.
bing, it made sense. It wasn't hurtful or harmful. I was just like, oh duh, like that makes so much sense. Like why am I even thinking otherwise? And it's because I had been cultivated and like raised and treated in such a way where I didn't take care of myself because I wasn't taken care of. So it's literally learning how to do that, and we learn that in relationship. Yeah, I don't know. This is feeling really good. I feel like
this could be like, I'm excited. I think we need to have our next episode or another conversation about vulnerability in itself, because like the big thing that we're talking about here that like is like the crux of authenticity is in our relationships is trust. Trusting in ourselves, trusting in the people in order for us to be able to, you know, show up fully.
Yeah.
So like to have like people need to be vulnerable in order to communicate and like be in these friendships well. Like yeah, but how can you trust these people to like for you to actually be vulnerable in the first place? There's like so many layers to
there's
that.
So
that
many layers. And like I would love to talk about like the past influencing the present, because I think the component there is being able to question like would this be their intention? Do I think this person was doing this to do this X, Y, and Z? Because our brain likes to fill in the blank. So it's like being curious about that, because that's important. That's the accountability part that starts to come into play. Like we can get angry, we can have our feelings about it and like hold that space and like validate that, but then be like, how do I want to approach this with intention? Yeah. And I think like one more point I wanted to like hone in on before like we do anything is talking about alignment. And I wanted to talk about alignment and misalignment and like I was meditating on that this week and thinking about like, how can I act in alignment? What does that mean to me? How do I approach these things in my life with intention and be within what I feel is my alignment? And I was sitting there and I'm meditating and I'm just like being open to receiving. And what comes to my brain is this voice that's like, bitch, listen here. Sometimes you need to be out of alignment. And you're probably like, girl, you're probably sitting there like, squirrel, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? And I'm like, okay, let me break it down for you. What I mean and what my little voice in my head meant by that is sometimes our alignment becomes our comfort zone. It becomes the place in which we have operated from when we feel like, okay, this is good, I'm locked in. Sometimes we need to step out of that alignment to step into a higher alignment. That's that attunement that we talked about. That's the attuning to that higher vibration, attuning to that different layer, like that different layer of existing. It's like, for me, that stepping out and stepping up is that communicating part. It's the like self-advocating in certain spaces and being able to speak in my relations. Yes.
I want to challenge you. It actually sounds like your like the part that is the attunement and the alignment is letting yourself listen to yourself. And that's the vehicle
no,
for
it
communication.
is. Yeah, listen, like validating myself, I think, is the thing that I do. Thank you, Jen. See, again, here we are in live action. It isn't speaking up because I do speak up. I think it is validating myself and then speaking from that place. Yeah. So that's my shit. What's yours? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I wanted to just touch on like alignment, misalignment, being in, being out, and like what it means to move through and like transition into and stepping into a different level of your power, your higher power, like owning that truth, that validation. I'll let you know how it goes for me.
Awesome. I want to share. I had a metaphor come to mind just now.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining it like tuning a guitar, and sometimes life feels flat, and sometimes it feels sharp. So I'm thinking like we're feeling low, and sometimes we're feeling really like on edge and anxious.
Yeah.
And like Ronnie, from what you're describing, it sounds like you allowed yourself to like tune the guitar just enough so that you were in tune again.
Yeah.
So like you use the information of if you were sharp or if you were flat, you allowed it to drive you toward tuning yourself in the way that you needed to. So like the comfort zone isn't actually in alignment anymore. And that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
It's not feeling good anymore. So even though we feel like this is who I am, right? There's something calling
It's like
you.
we need to like stretch. It's like almost like I think of this comfort zone like expanding because we need more space. It's not enough anymore. And that's like what I'm taking inventory in as I move through this space and this equinox is like the enoughness. Like, is this enough? And like what my senses were telling me is like, no, this is like you're not doing enough here. Like we need to take more in this area and we need to give more from this area. So like giving and taking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, I love
that. So I mean, with that, I want to invite you all to join us back here for the next episode when we talk about vulnerability and intention.
Yes. Yeah. It's gonna be vulnerability, trust, and intention.
Yeah.
3 baddies, the click.
It's the meat to said potatoes of today's conversation to really help us. Like if you are feeling stuck with that trust piece, I think like this next conversation is really going to help us tease out how to be authentic with that first piece of trusting our like how you can validate yourself, right? Like that's something in itself that we need to figure out how the heck do we do that?
Yeah. So, and all this to be said, tuning in, turning on, taking care of ourselves. I think it's slow but steady. We're learning how to do a lot of this for the first time. So like take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and definitely tune into our next conversation because something tells me it's going to be pretty delicious.
Yeah. So as we bid you farewell, remember, self-awareness is your compass, guiding you back to your center. Understanding your own rhythms is a true strength to help you navigate your emotions and your reactions.
So join us next time as we dive deeper into the human experience. Until then, breathe, find balance, and know you're not alone on this journey as we sit on the edge of enoughness.
Mm. If you love this episode as much as I obviously just did, please share it with a friend who wants to ride the waves of awareness with us.
Yeah, so thank you for tuning in, and stay mindful, stay present, and please keep exploring that extraordinary world within and outside of you. And until then, catch you on the trails.
Catch you on the trails.